Mr. Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lohmeyer, the role of Undersecretary of the Air Force is not a platform for ideology or grievance. It's a demanding leadership position that's responsible for overseeing a budget, personnel, institutional integrity. It requires a strategic vision and, really importantly, managerial experience. That is to say, hands-on experience managing a major organization. I'm at a loss to see what in your background qualifies you to lead or actually run the Air Force when you've never led an organization that approaches this one at anything like the scale and scope of what you would be expected to do if you're confirmed.
Senator, thanks for the opportunity to address that. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I've spent time in both the Air Force and the Space Force. I was trusted with to be an aircraft commander on the $50 million F-15C air-to-air superiority fighter, and then later was placed in command of our $18 billion space-based architecture a decade ago. And in fact, that was my first foray into working with program managers, acquisition experts, and budget.
What is the largest number of people under your direct responsibility that you
Senator, at the time that I finished my career, I was a squadron commander, and we had just over 100 people in our unit.
100?
That's right.
And how many will you be responsible for if you're confirmed?
The Department of the Air Force is approximately 700,000 active duty Guard and Reserve and civilian personnel.
So 100 versus 700,000. How long were you in charge of that squadron?
I was a squadron commander for 1 year, Senator.
1 year. Is that the standard length of time?
It is not.
Why was it shorter?
Senator, it was cut short when I was relieved of my command for publishing a book that's been mentioned in this hearing that was advocating for a return to an apolitical military workplace instead of dividing troops along political ideological lines.
So this is very strikingly reminiscent of what we've heard before in these confirmation hearings, seemingly for the Secretary of Defense, who also in effect was relieved of his responsibility when he was running a veterans organization and in effect ran it into the ground, which should have been a warning for all of us, as it was for me and others on the committee, about lack of managerial experience being potentially a really grave pitfall. And I'm very fearful that we're going to see the same in others in the Department of Defense. There's no room for managerial misguidance or mistakes. Again, let me ask you, what in your experience qualifies you for this job?
Thank you. I agree with you and share your concern. We have no room at this critical time with the threats that we face for our service secretaries and our undersecretaries to mismanage, to break the law, to not take the priorities of an administration seriously. And in fact, we need real leaders in place to make hard decisions about budgets and acquisition processes, major defense programs. We need them to make hard decisions about the nuclear modernization efforts that we have underway. And if confirmed, I'll take that very seriously. I'm a fast learner, and I'll surround myself with experts, including Dr. Mink, if he's confirmed, to try and solve those problems for the Department of Air Force.
Would you use Signal?
I do use Signal, Senator.
To talk to others in the Department of Defense or the national security establishment about the plans for pilots in the Air Force to do military missions?
Senator, one of the things I've become quite good at over my 15-and-a-half-year career in the Air Force and Space Force is understanding very well that there are sensitive and classified materials that should only be discussed in appropriate platforms, and we have appropriate platforms and media for those communications.
So the answer is no.
Signal is an unclassified messaging app, just like other apps, although it's end-to-end encrypted. And so if confirmed, that's something you need to take very seriously in those roles. Yes, Senator.
Is your answer no?
My answer is that
Would not
I will
use
use
Signal.
I will abide by the law, and I will make sure that any sensitive or classified communications are accomplished on the appropriate mediums.
But this is a yes or no answer. You would not use Signal, I assume, from your answer. Yes or no?
I will use Signal for private discussions that are unclassified with friends or colleagues, as I always have.
So you would not use it to discuss missions that pilots in the Air Force, you're going to be
Correct.
Undersecretary of the Air Force,
Yes,
if you're confirmed.
easy commitment, Senator.
Would be flying in hostile territory, such as those pilots were when the Secretary of Defense used Signal on 2 occasions to communicate about those highly sensitive, confidential, potentially dangerous missions, putting pilots at risk. You wouldn't do it, correct?
Senator, you have my commitment. I will not use Signal to discuss those things.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.